You think firing good people is cruel. You think it's heartless, unnecessary, the kind of thing only a tyrant would do. And that's exactly why your company will never build anything that matters. Let me tell you something most people refuse to hear. Being good at your job is not enough. Being nice is not enough. Showing up on time, doing what you're told, hitting your metrics, none of that is enough. Because good is the enemy of great, and nice is the enemy of honest. Most companies die slowly. They don't explode, they don't collapse overnight. They rot from the inside. And the rot always starts the same way, with one hire, one person who's pretty good. Not terrible, not incompetent, just fine. And everyone says they're doing okay, they're not causing problems. Why rock the boat? That person is a time bomb. Here's what happens. That pretty good person hires another pretty good person, because A players hire A players, but B players hire C players. They have to, because if you're a B player and you hire an A player, you spend every day terrified that everyone will notice you're not as good as them. So you hire someone slightly worse than you, someone safe, someone who won't make you look bad. And now you have 2 B players, and those 2 B players hire 4 C players, and those 4 C players hire 8 D players. Within 2 years, your company is full of people who are competent enough not to get fired, but not good enough to build anything extraordinary. And you're finished. You just don't know it yet. I call this the Bozo Explosion. It's not a joke. It's not an exaggeration. It's a pattern I've watched destroy companies over and over again. And once it starts, it's almost impossible to stop. Because here's the thing most people don't understand. Culture is not what you say. It's not your mission statement or your core values printed on the wall. Culture is who you hire, who you promote, who you tolerate. If you tolerate mediocrity, you've built a culture of mediocrity. If you tolerate people who are just okay, you're telling everyone in the company that just okay is acceptable. And the best people, the A players, they see that, they know, and they leave. Because great people don't want to work with good people. They want to work with other great people. This is not arrogance. This is reality. When we built the Macintosh, we had a team of about 100 people. And every single one of them was the best in the world at what they did. Not good, the best. And you know what's interesting? Managing that team was easier than managing a team of mediocre people. Why? Because when you have great people, you don't have to manage them. You don't have to micromanage. You don't have to hold their hand. You just point them in a direction and get out of their way. But when you have mediocre people, you have to manage everything. You have to check their work. You have to fix their mistakes. You have to motivate them because they're not intrinsically motivated. Most managers think hiring easier people, people who don't challenge them, people who don't push back, makes their life easier. It's the opposite. Mediocre people require more management, not less. Let me tell you what happens in most companies. Someone gets hired. They're fine, not amazing, but fine. And everyone's too polite to say anything. Because saying someone's not good enough feels mean. So they stay. And 6 months later, they're still just fine. And by then, they've made friends. They're part of the culture. They're nice. Everyone likes them. And now firing them feels even harder. Because you're not just firing an employee, you're firing someone's friend. This is where companies lose their nerve. They choose kindness over excellence. They choose comfort over honesty. They choose not rocking the boat over building something great. And they call this compassion. It's not compassion, it's cowardice. Because keeping someone in a role they're not great at is not kind. You're lying to them. You're telling them they're doing fine when they're not. You're letting them coast. You're preventing them from finding something they could actually be great at. And you're hurting everyone else on the team. Because the great people see it. They see someone getting paid the same as them who's not pulling their weight. And they resent it. And eventually, they leave. So by trying to be nice to one person, you lose 3 great people. That's not kindness. That's stupidity. Here's the brutal truth. If you can't fire people, you can't build great teams. And if you can't build great teams, you can't build great products. And if you can't build great products, you're done. Let me tell you what I used to do. When we were hiring, I didn't just look at resumes. I didn't just check references. I looked for one thing, standards. I wanted to know, what's the worst thing you've ever shipped? Because if someone's proud of something mediocre, they have low standards. And low standards are contagious. Great people are allergic to mediocrity. They can't stand it. It physically bothers them when something is just okay. You know how you can tell someone has high standards. They apologize for things no one else noticed. They see the pixel that's one shade off. They hear the note that's slightly flat. They feel the edge that's not quite smooth. And they can't let it go. They have to fix it. Those are the people you want. Everyone else, they're fine with good enough. And good enough is the graveyard of ambition. Now, here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because once you accept this, once you understand that tolerating mediocrity is cultural poison, you have to do something about it. And that means firing people. Not because they did something wrong, not because they're bad people, but because they're not great. And you need great. This is where most leaders fail, because firing someone who's not terrible feels cruel. But keeping them is crueler, because you're lying to them. You're keeping them in a job where they're not excelling, where they're always going to be compared to people better than them, where they're never going to feel like they're winning. If you actually cared about them, you'd let them go. You'd let them find something they could be great at. But most managers don't fire people because they care about the person. They don't fire people because they're uncomfortable. And they disguise that discomfort as compassion. Let me tell you something. The worst thing you can do to a great person is surround them with mediocre people. Because great people want to be challenged. They want to work with people who make them better. They want to be the dumbest person in the room sometimes. If you're the smartest person in every meeting, you're in the wrong company. When we were building the iPhone, the team was small, maybe 200 people, and every single one of them could argue with me. They could tell me I was wrong. They could push back, and I loved it, because I didn't hire them to agree with me. I hired them to be better than me at what they do. The worst teams are full of people who nod, who agree with everything, who never challenge anything. You know what that creates? Groupthink, blind spots, products that feel safe and boring. The best teams fight. They argue, they disagree, and then they commit, they build. But here's the thing. You can only have those fights if everyone in the room is great, because mediocre people don't argue. They defer. They go along. They assume someone smarter than them has figured it out. Great people assume no one's figured it out, and they're going to be the one who does. That's the energy you need. Now let's talk about what actually happens when you let mediocrity in. First, your product gets worse. Not because mediocre people sabotage it, but because they accept trade-offs great people wouldn't. They say that's good enough. They say we don't have time to make it perfect. They say users won't notice. And every single one of those sentences is a compromise, a tiny erosion of standards. And if you make 1,000 tiny compromises, you end up with a mediocre product. Second, your culture shifts. Because culture is what you tolerate. If you tolerate people who are just okay, everyone else gets the message. Excellence is optional. And once that message is sent, it's almost impossible to reverse. Third, your best people leave. I help here, because great people don't stay at companies that tolerate mediocrity. They can work anywhere. Why would they stay somewhere that doesn't challenge them? And once your best people leave, you're left with the mediocre ones. And now you're stuck. Because mediocre people don't leave, they stay. Because they know they can't get a better job elsewhere. So you end up with a company full of people who are comfortable, who aren't going anywhere, who aren't building anything interesting. And you wonder why your company feels slow, why nothing exciting is happening. It's because you let it happen. Most people think culture is something you build. Vision statements, team outings, free snacks, that's not culture. Culture is who you fire. If you fire people who are toxic but talented, you're saying we value how we work together. If you fire people who are nice but mediocre, you're saying we value excellence. If you don't fire anyone, you're saying we don't value anything. Let me tell you the scariest part of the Bozo Explosion. It's silent, you don't see it happening. One day you look around and realize your company is full of people who are fine. And you can't remember when it happened. That's how it works. It's gradual, one hire at a time, one compromise at a time. And by the time you notice, it's too late. Because firing one mediocre person is manageable. Firing half your company is impossible. So here's what you have to do. You have to be ruthless from the beginning. Every hire is a cultural decision. Every person you let in is a signal to everyone else about what you value. If you hire someone mediocre, you're telling everyone that mediocrity is acceptable. If you hire someone great, you're raising the bar for everyone. And this is why hiring is the most important thing you do. Not strategy, not product, hiring. Because if you get the people right, everything else follows. But if you get the people wrong, nothing else matters. Here's a test. Look around your company. How many people would you enthusiastically rehire if they quit tomorrow? If the answer is less than 100%, you have a problem. Because if you wouldn't rehire them, why are they still there? Most managers avoid this question because answering it honestly is uncomfortable. But great leaders ask it constantly, and they act on it. If someone's not great, they let them go. Not because they're cruel, but because they owe it to everyone else. Because keeping one mediocre person hurts 10 great people. Let me tell you what most people get wrong about firing. They think it's about performance reviews, metrics, warnings. It's not. It's about standards. Either someone meets your standards or they don't. If they don't, no amount of coaching will fix it. Because the gap isn't skill, it's mindset. Mediocre people can learn new skills, but they can't learn to care more. They can't learn to have higher standards. They can't learn to be obsessed. You either are or you aren't. And if you aren't, you don't belong on a team building something great. Now here's the part that really bothers people. This sounds elitist. It sounds harsh. And it is. Because greatness is elitist. Greatness is harsh. Greatness is unforgiving. If you want to build something that changes the world, you can't be nice about it. You have to be willing to hurt feelings. You have to be willing to let people go. You have to be willing to be the bad guy. Because the alternative is building something forgettable. And life is too short to build forgettable things. Let me tell you what happens when you get this right. When you build a team of A players, when you're ruthless about standards, first work becomes easier. Because everyone's great. You don't have to micromanage. You don't have to fix mistakes. You just point people in a direction and they run. Second, culture becomes magnetic. Because great people attract great people. And once you have a reputation for only hiring the best want to work for you. Third, you build things you didn't think were possible. Because great people push each other. They challenge each other. They make each other better. And suddenly, you're not building a product. You're building something that matters. But here's the thing. This only works if you're willing to fire people. Because standards without consequences aren't standards. They're suggestions. And suggestions don't build great companies. So here's what I want you to understand. Firing good people is not cruel. It's necessary. Because good is not good enough. Good is the enemy of great. And if you're not building something great, why are you building anything at all? Most people spend their lives building things that don't matter. They hire people who are fine. They build products that are okay. They create companies that exist but don't mean anything. And then they wonder why they feel empty. It's because they compromised. They chose comfort over excellence. They chose not rocking the boat over building something extraordinary. And you can't build something extraordinary with mediocre people. You just can't. So, if you want to build something that matters, if you want to create something people remember, you have to be willing to do the hard thing. You have to be willing to fire people who are good but not great. But not great. You have to be willing to be the bad guy. You have to be willing to have the uncomfortable conversations. Because the alternative is spending your life surrounded by people who are fine, building things that are okay, creating nothing that lasts. And when you're on your deathbed, when you look back at your life, do you really want to say, I built things that were fine? Or do you want to say, I built something great? That's the choice. And it starts with who you hire, who you keep, who you let go. Culture is not what you say, it's who you tolerate. And if you tolerate mediocrity, you've already lost. So look around your company, look at your team. Ask yourself honestly, how many of these people would I enthusiastically rehire? And if the answer makes you uncomfortable, you know what you have to do. Because great companies aren't built by people who are nice. They're built by people who are honest. And sometimes honesty means firing good people. Not because they're bad, but because they're not great. And you need great because life's too short. And the world has enough mediocre companies. Build something that matters. Or don't build anything at all.